Okay, so you started out basically training executives, and then that worked its way into you're starting Meitan.
Yeah, we worked with young executives for about 2 years, and we got to know a lot of people who were kind of in the day-to-day world of regulating and monitoring the media world. And so 4 years ago, we started a company called Meitan Media, or Meitan Development Group. Meitan in Chinese means beautiful sky. And we looked at starting out in the TV world, because TV is something that I know much better than anything else. And we started doing TV. We do a little bit of film now. We do a lot of internet content, and we're even starting to do some live events now. So we've been there 4 years.
Let me just ask you, what is the hardest thing that you deal with operating in China?
Well, first, there are huge cultural differences. I mean, the way their culture is and the way ours are pretty different. And the one thing we found when I decided to go there, when they invited me, to start doing stuff, I first looked and said, why have most Western media companies failed in this market? And it's not hard to figure out that if you don't really plan on being in China and you think you're going to manage it from Australia or even Singapore, it's not going to work. If you're going to do business in China, you got to be in China. You got to immerse yourself in the culture. You have to have incredible amount of patience. They don't do stuff the way we do in the West, and they're not going to do it just because we tell them that this is the way we do it. From the other side, we sit and we read all these press releases and stuff that, is in the trades about $8 million, $100 film funds and all of this stuff.
That's a new one. You're referring to the new.
No, I've seen the $800 million film fund about 5 or 6 times already.
And you think it's not a real thing?
Yeah, most of the time they're not real. I mean, we just kind of laugh. There are a lot of announcements that go on, and
so what happens? They just don't come together, or
they just never happen. They're basically press releases. It's like if you put out a press release, maybe you'll get lucky and find the $800 million and stuff like that. A lot of it is just naivete. Westerners think that just because someone is Chinese, that makes them important in China, and vice versa. I see people in China all the time that get introduced to me. Oh, here's, John Doe. He's one of the most important people in Hollywood. And I'm like, I've been around way too long. I've never heard of this guy. But yet the Chinese have been willing to accept a lot of people that, I call them B-movie producers, that just kind of go there and make up a story about themselves. And
it works.
And it seems to work for them. So we make stuff that's just for China, but one of our underlying business models, we use the web in China very differently than the web gets used here. The internet in China reaches 550 million people. Money in China is in a very different place than it is in the rest of the world. People who have money in China are 25 to 40 years old. There's no money below because everybody's a student. There's no money above because they're kind of, the old guard. So to go after those people, they're consuming media, but they consume it on the web. So the brands, particularly the international brands, are beginning to realize if you want to reach 25 to 40-year-olds that are educated, that have money, you could reach them with TV-like programming or film-like programming, but they're going to consume it on the internet. Years ago, if you were going to make a movie, you sat there and said, okay, I'm putting Antonio Banderas because he's going to help me carry the Spanish-speaking markets. Now, all of a sudden, China has emerged as a major consumer of movies, and I think if you're a movie maker, I think China's up to about 8 or 9% of the global box office. So not to think about how you're going to carry the Chinese market or the Asian markets is just beyond my ability to think. So yes, you've got to start thinking of how you're going to carry those markets. Here in the U.S., if you have an interesting idea, and you go to Coke or Pepsi, they're really careful how they analyze it because they're fighting over 1/10 of a point of market share. In China, if somebody does something right, you can swing the needle on market share 10 points or 20 points. So the brands are much more willing to listen to crazy ideas and start new things. So the money is, money for innovative ideas are actually easier to get there than here.
Great.